love the smell of brown sugar. And it tastes so good in cakes and banana breads and even in tea. I wonder what it would taste like in beer. Well, my name's Craig, and I'm going to do a home brew today using a Cooper's lager, which is what I normally make when I make my beer, because I like it. It's nice and mild, unintrusive taste, nice and refreshing. But instead of adding the 1 kilogram bag of corn sugar that you normally would add to this to boost your alcohol, I'm going to add a 1 kilogram bag of dark brown sugar. Now, this stuff here doesn't have a lot of flavor. I mean, it's in a paper bag, can't smell anything. It's pretty much just sugar. That's it. But this stuff here, you can smell it through the plastic. It's got a very dark, for lack of a better word, sweet, smoky kind of flavor. And it's almost reminiscent of a dry malt, which you can add to your beer to improve the flavor as well. So I'm going to try this. This was $2 for this 1 kilogram bag. I've never done this before. I'm very curious to see how this is going to affect the taste of my beer. And I'm just trying it for you, for me. It's an experiment we're going to try here together. And when I taste this thing, I'll let you know how it tastes. In a few weeks, we'll do a taste video. And it's fun. Home brewing is fun. And let's get started. Now, first thing I'm going to do is sanitize my equipment. And you can, there's a video I already did on sanitizing. You can watch it. I will put a link down in the more info section of how I sanitize my equipment. Everything that touches your beer must be sanitized. I use sodium metabisulfite to do that. But you can use whatever sanitizer you feel comfortable with. This has to be rinsed off after you apply it because it can affect the performance of your yeast if you don't rinse it off. But there are some that you can use that don't have to be rinsed off. Whatever you want to use, as long as you sanitize your stuff properly, that's all you need to do. And this I'm going to submerge in a pot of hot water to soften it up so it's easier to pour. And once I do those things, we'll come back and we're ready to go. Let's do it. Okay, I've sanitized my fermenter and all my equipment. I have a hydrometer here that's been sanitized as well, and a can opener that's also been sanitized. You got to get yourself a separate can opener for this. You don't want to be using the same one you open your dog food and stuff with. And I've got a kettle back there full of boiled water ready to go. Here's what we do, right? We'll grab our can of malt extract, which is in a pot full of hot water. That will allow it to pour easier because it's very thick stuff. Let's take our lid off. This has all been sanitized. I'm just going to set that down on a paper towel along with our airlock here. And let's open this up. So again, we're doing a lager and we're adding dark brown sugar instead of normal dextrose. It's going to be interesting. One thing first before we go anywhere is make sure that your spigot is closed. You know, when you sanitized your bucket, you might have opened it to let water out. Double check that because you'll end up with big issues if you don't have that closed up. Pour the malt extract into the fermenter here. Just keep letting her rip as much as we can here, and then we'll just, at some point, we're going to stop. Very sticky. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is get the kettle of hot or boiled water and pour it into here. This is going to allow us to get the rest of that out of there because it's very concentrated and you don't want to lose any of it or waste any of it because, it's very thick stuff. Now this is hot and I do this every time. I burn myself every time. It's very, very hot. Once you get that boiled water in, just give it a good stir around. to make sure it's all off the bottom and the sides. Actually, I'm going to pour it down the lid to get the stuff off the lid as well. There. That works good. See? Nice and clean. Perfect. Okay. Now, next thing I'm going to do is add my brown sugar, which is the main reason we're doing this. I don't know how this is going to work, but we'll see. 1 kilogram of brown sugar. Scissors are in need of replacement. Oh, that's good enough. There we are. And I have to come back here and add some hot water to this, and then we'll stir it all around. I'm also going to move my camera so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I put this over here. I'm ready to fill it with water to get it up to the 5-gallon mark. Now I'm going to put some hot water in first, just to mix this initial stage up here. The sugar and the wort, and the extract. Give that a good stir. Get everything all mixed together. Get it all off the bottom. Now, brown sugar is going to be harder to dissolve than regular corn sugar, you know. So we got to make sure this is all mixed up. Put a little more hot water in there just to make sure we can. Get everything all dissolved here. Just giving it a good stir. I would probably stir this for a couple of minutes just to make sure that all the malt extract and everything is off the bottom of the fermenter. There we go. Now we're just going to add our cold water. We have to end up with a temperature of about, 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. No higher than 80. I've got a stick-on thermometer here, so it'll be easy for me to tell what my temperature is at. So this is cold water. So it's the same thing. I mean, it's the same brewing process that you do that I've done before, but just using brown sugar. But this is how easy it is to make beer from a kit, and it usually tastes darn good. This, well, we'll see. I don't know how it's going to taste. It probably tastes pretty good. So now what I'm doing here, I just want to point this out. I'm feeling the side of my fermenter, and it's feeling cold. So I know that if I keep filling this up with cold water, it's going to be too cold to add my yeast. So now what I need to do is get a combined temperature here of hot and cold. There, that feels okay. Something that it feels like it's the temperature that you're going to want. And this line here, this little ridge, that's where you have to fill it up to. That'll give you the 5 imperial gallon mark. All right. And there we go. That's that. So now, give it a good stir again. To get all the temperatures even. So what did we do? We took a Cooper's lager, we mixed it with brown sugar, dark brown sugar instead of normal dextrose or corn sugar. and this will give us a different flavor. I don't know what kind of a flavor, but this is how you experiment. You know, you can add fruit. You can add, I've done honey before, maple syrup. I was going to do that, except that the maple syrup that I wanted to add was $10. So I don't know if I would do that on a normal basis, but some people asked about chocolate. I guess you would double boil some baker's chocolate and put that in. And so what I'm going to do is take a hydrometer reading. Now I've sanitized the hydrometer and the tube, the test tube. So I'm going to take it out of the tap. Here we are. And just see where we are with this reading here. Looks like we're at about 1.040, which is going to give us, according to this, probably about 5% alcohol. Okay, so now I sanitized the whole thing, so I can pour that back in now. Give it one more little stir here. And we're going to add our yeast. Okay. There we are. Smells good. Sprinkle it fairly evenly along the top, but I don't worry too much about how evenly I sprinkle this because I'm going to stir it in anyways. Give her a final stir. The reason I stir my yeast in is because it cuts down on the latency of the yeast getting multiplying and getting started with the fermentation process. Leaving it on top, it just takes longer and the foam has to dissipate. I'd rather get it going and get it started as quickly as possible. Get it all in there. You guys have seen me do this a million times, you know, it's the same thing every time. I'm going to be doing some mead. I'm very excited about doing mead, actually. It's making, you know, using honey to make an alcoholic beverage. That's going to be cool. I'm also going to experiment with adding some fruit to these batches of beer. So that's something I want to do as well. Get a good stir here. Awesome. There we are. I'll grab our lid. Make sure it's on good and tight, and you can watch my, I've got a video called Airlocks 101 that will describe to you what happens if you don't have a good seal on your fermenter and your airlock doesn't bubble. It's not the end of the world when that happens. It doesn't mean it's not working. It just means that you might have a leak somewhere or some air is escaping from somewhere else other than the airlock. And you need to know what to look for and how to handle that situation. And it doesn't mean your brew is screwed. It just means that you need to do some different things to decide whether you're, whether it's finished fermenting or, using a hydrometer, so forth. Grab our airlock. I always like to make sure there's no suction or anything inside the fermenter before I add my water. Perfect. Now here's where I check for, I'll move the camera for you so you can see. Okay, so how I check to make sure I've got a good seal? I press down on the airlock and hold. And if it stays like that, you know you've got a good seal on your fermenter. If it doesn't, if it does this and comes back to normal again as you're pressing, then you know you've got a leak. And again, my Airlock 101 video will describe to you what to do and what that means. But right now I've got a great seal, as I always do with this fermenter. That's it. Now, it's a little cool down in my basement here. So I'm going to use a heat belt. And you should have one of these if you're brewing in a cooler climate. If you're brewing in the garage or in the basement, or, well, I wouldn't do it in the garage if you live in Canada, but in the basement here, where it gets down to about 65 degrees, this thing will keep it up at around 74, something like that. Perfect. And there we are. A Cooper's lager with some dark brown sugar. I don't know how it's going to work out, but we'll find out in a few weeks. I'll do a taste test video. We'll see what happens. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your support. Thanks for clicking on the ads below. That helps me a lot, and I really appreciate you watching. Take care. See you next time. Bye.